Thank you for attending today's Facebook Live. If this is your first Facebook Live, please join the group. So I'm broadcasting this from a specific Facebook group. We call it we call it Marketing Leaders Lab. And there's a link up, down, left, or right that you can click that will get you entrance into the group. The group it's on Facebook. It's free. What's the purpose of the group? The purpose of the group is to talk about your agency as an agency. So it's called Marketing Leaders Lab because you sell marketing services in some way, but you're the leader of that business. And there's another conversation that you should be having every day. There's a whole lot of marketing stuff we could talk about. That there's a whole lot of tips and tricks of the day and all these fancy, clever things that marketers know and talk about, but is it useful to you, right? Is it, or how can it be useful to you? How should you apply those things? What pitfalls are you experiencing? As the leader of the business, how do you deploy marketing services? How do you execute marketing services so that it's of value to you and the people you serve? It's a whole conversation. It's more than just a downloadable PDF. And this group is a place where we're having some of those dialogues. So Emily is here. Hello, Emily. And just sound check while Emily just arrived. Am I coming through okay? Sound-wise, am I coming through okay? So that's what the group is about. I aspire towards a different conversation than just more marketing stuff, more marketing hacks, more marketing software, more marketing gotta-haves, et cetera, et cetera. Frankly, I think all those clever ideas are just distractions and they're actually destroying your business. So the group is a place where we're having another kind of conversation so you can focus on a different thing. Great. So Emily says I'm coming through well. So now all the sound we know is actually working well. So that's what the group is. So if you don't know what the group is, never heard the group, that's fine. That's totally cool. But that's what the group is for. There are a lot of groups out there where it's just people yelling at each other. It's just the expert trying to be the expert, and everybody else is like their little minion. And I do not aspire towards that. I aspire to talk to other business leaders. I aspire to talk about how you've got to think so that your business works best for you. And I aspire to see those results stack on one another. That's really what I'm after. So if you like that as well, then join the group. The group is free. Great. Thank you, Jack. So again, so far so good. All sounds is working great. And Denise is here. Hey, Denise. There's kind of thing number one I wanted to say to open things up. Thing number two is I realize that for where you might be right now, for where you are right now, more ideas, more thoughts, more conversation is not what you need. I can appreciate that what you need is a solution to your specific problem. You are trying to build your agency. You are trying to rebuild your agency. You are trying to get acceleration and momentum in your agency. And I have a program that's designed to specifically do that. So we focus on 3 core systems. We focus on client acquisition. We focus on client service. We focus on client retention and giving you systems for those things. And one of the places where people have the most struggle, where the gap is the biggest, is how they do lead generation. There's a hole in their business as client acquisition, the process for client acquisition. So that's one of the things we do specifically inside the program, give you a process for client acquisition, help you execute this process for client acquisition. There's a link up, down, left, right that you can click so that you can schedule time with me. We can talk about your challenges. We can talk about the program that I facilitate. We can make sure there's a match between those two things. If there is, love to have you. Please join us. If there is not, no big deal. And you can go on, whatever the next route is, take that route. But I offer my program as a solution for those who are trying to actively grow an agency and need systems for growing that agency. So there you go. All right. So we got folks who are here. Hey, Nelson. Nelson's here. Hey, Nelson, good to have you here. Okay, here we go. So I've got some content here already kind of lined up for us to dialogue about. There are a few questions that came in a little earlier. We're going to work through all of them. So Emily, let's tackle number one. We're going to start with idea number one, and that is about infrastructure, right? Emily's on it, right? So there's infrastructure. Okay, what is infrastructure? Who talks about infrastructure? How many pieces of content have you read and someone talks about the word infrastructure? I am now talking to you about the word infrastructure. Okay, what am I talking about? So let's draw a comparison. When you used to work for someone else, or maybe you still do work for someone else, when you worked in that other environment, there was an environment you worked in. You had an email address that someone created for you. There was a cubicle that you worked at. There was a laptop or a desktop computer that was provided for you. There was a phone line. You had a phone line, a number where folks could call you. There were meeting rooms that you could use. There was a database of experts. You could go to your Outlook perhaps, or go into your email client, and you could search all the different departments, whether it was the mail room or technology or operations, or whether it was marketing. You could search that database and find people. There was an existing environment. I'm using the word infrastructure. There was a business infrastructure that you worked in. Now that you run your own business, you are intimately aware of the fact that you no longer have that infrastructure. And for a lot of people, that is the pain that they're feeling. And perhaps that's the pain that you're feeling. There used to be, how do you create your own email address? How do you create your own phone number if you want clients to call you, but not on your personal phone, right? Like, how do you create a business line for yourself? How do you create your own website? You might be good at digital marketing, but you're good at the advertising part. The web design part is something else. So if you need web design help, how do you get that done? When you used to work for another company, you could call up another expert. You could call up the marketing department. You could call up the sales department. You could call up your boss. You could call up the CEO, the leader of the company, or whoever. You can call up the chief financial officer and get that dialogue, get your question answered, and keep running. But when you don't have any of that, when those assets and that infrastructure is gone, now you got to answer those questions all for yourself. You got to answer your own finance questions. You got to answer your own technology questions. You got to answer your own operations questions. You got to answer your own marketing questions. And you are now intimately aware of how difficult it is to navigate all those things by yourself. Infrastructure is what I'm talking about. And when I talk on the phone to folks like you who run agencies, talk on the phone, no one says the word infrastructure. No one says, Alzay, we're missing certain elements of infrastructure. Nobody says that. Everybody wants what they want. But part of the reason why you can't get what you want fast enough is because you don't have the infrastructure to support that strategy. You don't have the in-house expertise to support that idea. You don't have the personal bandwidth, infrastructure, like other team members. You don't have the bandwidth, the team, to see that thing all the way through. Sometimes you don't have the time. You just physically don't have the time. Even if it's you and your team members, you don't have the time to see that idea all the way through. And so you're feeling this friction and you don't know why. And I'm trying to give you at least one bit of highlight on why you're feeling that friction. Infrastructure. You don't have the support required to execute what it is you're trying to execute. No one says that to you. That's my bright idea right now. That's what I'm screaming right now. No one says that to you. You get sold on concepts, you get sold on clever ideas, you get sold software platforms, and the moment you bring that stuff or try to bring that stuff into your business, it becomes immediately clear, wait a minute, we don't have 6 months to figure this out. Wait a minute, we don't have someone that we can dedicate to figuring out that system, that process, or that piece of software. Wait a minute, we don't have the additional budget to spend $10,000 more on top of the initial payment to make the rest of this work. Wait a minute, we don't have the infrastructure required to execute on that thing. No one says that to you, but I'm saying it to you now. and perhaps that will give some clarity into what you should be doing, how, and why. Lynn is here. Hey, Lynn. Joan is here. Hey, Joan. So now I'm infrastructure, right? So Emily, let's go to our next topic here, because we're talking about the webinar trap. So I just talked about infrastructure, and right now you may still be thinking to yourself, okay, Alzay, that was clever, but like, so what, right? How does that land? Okay, so I want to give you an example of a conversation I had with someone just yesterday. This someone I'm talking about runs an established agency. He has real clients. He has real, he's got anchor clients. So they make money every month. He's got a team. He's got team members to help him execute. He's got sales team members. He's got marketing team members. He's got a team, right? So this is a legitimate agency doing legitimate services. So this is not, some fly by night guessing their way through it. No. Talented person, talented agency, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, great. So this is about, we'll call it 6 months ago, give or take. Okay, 6 months ago, he got mentally locked in on the idea of doing a webinar. He was going to use webinars as his client acquisition strategy. That's the decision he was making. When he first brought it up, I said to him, don't do it. Now, I have webinars. I use webinars aggressively in my business. I've done them for years. I still do them. I believe in them, etc. I am a supporter of the webinar concept, and very much so. I advised him not to do it. I said, don't do it, sir. Don't do it. Why? Because you don't have the infrastructure to support webinars. Doing webinars requires doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things. And making all those things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things, requires iterations. It requires testing. It requires software to do those different things. It requires you to have to hook up that software to make all those things work. It's not just doing a presentation. It's not just deciding on some clever content and just doing it. Oh, and by the way, we haven't talked about the content. Creating the actual content and structuring the actual content and getting your call to action right and all of that. So I tried my best to explain all of what goes into the infrastructure of making a webinar work. But like many people, he'd already locked in on it. He'd already decided webinars are what we're going to do. We're going to try it and see what happens. He decided, go for it. So now here we are, roughly 6 months later, and he is saying, he is repeating the phrase, which I know you've heard before. I hear it too from my clients. He says, Alzay, it doesn't work. What is it? The webinar. It doesn't work. What does work mean? It doesn't, we're not getting any sales from. We aren't seeing any results. We aren't seeing any results. Wait a minute. And then he began to talk and talk and talk. I said I had to slow him down and bring the conversation back. My point at this exact moment is he tried something. It's not working the way he thinks it should work. And his language, his words are, it doesn't work. And when I press on him, he says, the webinar doesn't work, or the webinar doesn't give us results. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying to you is that language is not specific enough. You cannot solve the problem if you're talking about this general thing called it. And you cannot solve the problem if what you want are results and you don't know what those results are. You don't even know what your expectations for results should be. But I warned him, no infrastructure or not enough infrastructure. Please don't do it. He was already decided. He pressed on. And so now he's trying to, make the webinar thing work. It's not working how he wants. And now he's frustrated. So just for the sake of specificity in this particular conversation with you, right? Me talking to you right now. Not only do you have to create the technical setup for a webinar, I won't even talk about that right now. Forget all that. You've got to you got to find a traffic source, find people to get on the webinar. You got to get them to register for the actual webinar. You've got to get them to attend the webinar. You've got to get them to stay on the webinar. You've got to make the appropriate call to action at the end of that webinar. And then you got to set expectations for what happens next once they take your core call to action. That's 6 things. Those are all 6 measurable things. Those are 6 measurable things. So when you say it doesn't work, which of the it's are you talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Which of the it's don't work? This is my dialogue with him. It's also my dialogue to you, because I know that you are also somewhere inside your business is the marketing hack of the day. You may have just bought a new piece of software. You may have just bought a digital download. You may have just bought into a program of some sort. You just bought into that stuff, right? You just downloaded something. You just read a new blog post. Someone just impressed you with some idea that you had thought of before, and you're wowed with the possibility of that new idea. I'm trying to help you right now draw a line between that idea and the infrastructure you need to execute that idea. Do you have the infrastructure? Do you even know the infrastructure requirements for the idea? Do you know? If you happen to know, great. But most people don't know. The idea sounds good. You throw yourself into it. And then once you get into it, you realize that you made a poor choice. And now you're suffering through the repercussions of that choice. Okay. Let's move on, Emily. Let's move on. So infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure can have you in the marketing hack of the day. For him, it was webinars, because webinars sound so cool that everybody's got one, blah, 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 blah. And now he's trying to do it, and it's frustrating him. Let's move on in this conversation. So, hey, Darius, by the way, Darius is here. Hey, Darius. So in the two of us having this dialogue now, because I'm trying to help him understand really, or re-understand how a webinar needs to come together. And when he says it doesn't work, what specific part of it is he talking about? And does he have the infrastructure? Do you have the time, the people, the money, the expertise? Do you have the infrastructure to see this webinar process all the way through? Because he might not. He might not. So we're having this conversation. We're going back and forth. And he says something. He makes the phrase, as we were discussing all these ideas and all these kind of things. He says, I'm realizing now that if I don't decide specifically on my options, if I'm not aware of my resources and make a very specific decision, we can end up busy and broke. And I just started to laugh. I thought it was funny. Busy and broke. Is that not an accurate description? So you get all these marketing hacks of the day, ideas of the day, tools of the day, fancy things that you gotta have. You're trying your best to implement all these things at once, because that was part of his scenario. Because he wasn't just doing the webinar stuff. He had 2 or 3 other things that were happening at the exact same time. So in his agency, he's trying to figure out all these things at once, right? And he's not liking it. It's not making him happy. And he realizes that if he continues to go down that path, he will be busy and broke. You'll be busy because you'll be scrambling around to figure all that stuff out. You'll feel busy. Oh, the busyness will be taking place. I don't have time because I got to figure out this. I got to figure out that, figure out this, figure out that. But you won't get your return. You won't actually have new conversations inside your business. You won't actually have new clients inside your business. You'll just have more tasks to do. You'll be busy, but you'll be broke. And so we were having this conversation right now. Have you felt this? Be honest. You don't have to respond inside the chat window. You're already having that feeling in your gut right now. Have you been here? Have you been busy and broke? Because what I know, again, being on the phone, talking to real people, is that there are these highs and lows that live inside your business. There are these times where you're closing clients, things are good, you're on retainer, things are wonderful. You've made 10 grand this month, you've made 40 grand this month, you made 100 grand this month. Things are great. And then something happens, things seem to kind of melt down, and you find yourself on the exact opposite down. All of a sudden, you got 2 clients left, and where you made 10 grand last month, you're gonna make 2 grand this month, and you get nervous. You had a team, you scaled up because you were gonna make $40,000 this month, and then the next month happens, and all of a sudden you can't keep your team members. You're having to cut people. You're having to change services. You're having to make all these last minute adjustments because you can't maintain what you just did, right? Busy. Broke. You've experienced this before. These crazy ups and downs. And why is that? How is that? And one of the things that nobody talks about is that you are trying to execute something. You didn't have everything you needed. And by the time you extended yourself fully into that thing, you've spent your time, you've spent your money, and now you're in a panic. You didn't have the infrastructure required when you got started. And no one talks to you about infrastructure. No one tells you about what you need in order to be successful. They just tell you about some fancy tool that they have to offer you. If you're courageous enough, admit that you've made this mistake. So if you feel comfortable, admit that you made. So whether you're watching it live right now or whether you're watching this in video, if you know you've made a mistake by committing to something before you had the infrastructure, just admit. Just say, I admit it. Just type, I admit it. So Jonah's already admitted, yes, busy, talented, and broke. I can relate. Right. This happens to real people. This happens to real people. This is not something, I'm not inventing something. This is real. We don't talk about it. And actually, Emily, let's move to the next. What we really don't talk about are the choices that you make as the leader of the company that put you in that situation. We don't talk about that. We talk about how to sell this, sell that, sell this, sell that, but we don't talk about the decisions that you make that put you in that situation. Yeah, right? So Nelson is admitting. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Nelson, for just admitting that, right? It happens to all of us. So let's move on to the next kind of stage in this conversation. So I'm talking with him, right? We're live in this conversation, and I'm like, I wasn't wagging my finger and saying, hey, I told you don't do webinars, because there's no value in that. At this point, he had already committed so far into doing webinars and making that work inside of his business. So I was trying to be as helpful as I could in this very tight time frame so that he could make the next best decision. So now that we're already here, right? What's the next best decision? That's where we were in that conversation. So then he says something else. He says, so we go through all these iterations and choices, and here's what makes the most sense given your situation, etc. And he says something, another phrase that I thought was really powerful. He says, so Alzay, what's my problem? Like, what problem am I having, right? In other words, what mistake am I making? What mistakes have I made that got me here? That's what he's asking. When he said, what's my problem? That's what he's asking. What mistakes have I made to get us here? I can't tell you how much respect I have for him for even saying that out loud, because many people don't admit that they've made a mistake at all. Many people will not admit that they've made a mistake at all. They just want to know what the next best secret is. Get me out of this thing I'm in. But they don't admit that there are some choices that they've made to get them where they are, and you got to make some new choices to get you out of what you're in. Whether it's growing into the next level or whatever, it doesn't matter where you are in growth. It doesn't matter. If you want to go to the next level, there's some new choices you have to make, and that's essentially what he was asking, right? He was asking, what's my problem? What mistakes have I made? So I'll offer you three things it as it relates to you in your situation, okay? Specifically for you. Number one, and this is what I said to him as well. Number one, you are trapped inside the business. You are literally trapped in the execution of the business. He's firefighting every day. He told me some stories that were present for him, so I knew the rhythm the moment he began to speak. He was firefighting every day. Every day was a new emergency. Every day was a new issue. And he was inside the business, fixing that, fixing this, fixing that, fixing this. he was trapped inside the business. He even admitted that he's spending 80% of his time doing execution things inside his business and 20% of his time really leading the business and doing the things that leaders should do. Y'all, that's flip-flopped. I mean, he literally is backwards. He's out of order. He should be spending 80% of his time designing a business that works and 20% dealing with the small issues. 80% should be spent designing the business that works. I'm saying the exact same thing to you. 80% of your time should be spent designing a business that works versus problem solving and troubleshooting all day long. Here's the second part of what I shared with him that I'm also sharing with you right now. If we're honest, you don't know how to design the business you want. It wasn't a class available in school. It wasn't in middle school. It wasn't in high school. It wasn't in college. You didn't get certified in it. There was no post-educational experience about it. If you went to grad school, it wasn't in your grad school training. This concept of designing a business you want is not a skill you currently have. And nobody talks about it. They'll sell you a program. They'll sell you a service. They'll sell you a software thingamajig, right? You've been here. We get this stuff all the time. But no one comes to you and says, and first of all, expresses the importance of designing the business you want. In other words, can you see it on a sheet of paper? If you've designed it, then you can hold up a sheet of paper that explains your entire business. And if you can't do that, if you cannot do that, that's your fault. If you cannot do that, that's your gap. You've got to be able for yourself to document and design. I want this to work that way, this to work that way, this to work that way. And if you cannot do that, there are decisions that you haven't made inside the business. Let me take that one level deeper to make sure I'm not speaking in code. I'm saying that you need to have a clear process for how you do client acquisition. It can't be guesswork. It can't be simply word of mouth. It can't be waiting for the next referral. There's got to be a documented, specific way that you do client acquisition and you trust that method. There's got to be a specific way that you do client service. In here, we call it having a productized service. There's got to be a specific way that you do client service. It's documented. You trust it. You can clearly explain it to your client, and your client can clearly explain it back to you. Productized, clearly defined service. You've got to have a clearly identified way of doing client retention. How do clients stay in your business? You got to have that documented. Those three things should fit on a sheet of paper. They should be itemized and clearly outlined on one sheet of paper, on the front side of a sheet of paper. So not front and back, not double. No, simplify your life. Take all those ideas and you need one core concept for client acquisition, one core concept for client service, one core concept for client retention. If you don't have that, then there's your headache. This is the beginning of designing a business that works for you. But you haven't done that. For many people, they've never done that. They're just hustling really, really hard, trying to sell what they know or sell what they know how to do, sell some deliverables to anybody who will buy them. They're just selling stuff to anybody who will buy them. And then you wonder why you are so fatigued, why you're so tired, why you feel so scrambled. You're behaving in a scrambled way. But what I'm describing to you is linear. Linear. If it's on a piece of paper and it's all spelled out, it's not scrambled. It's linear. You've never had this conversation. No one's ever challenged you to have this conversation. So you just keep spinning around, right? Hey, am I crazy? Am I just like, am I on a serious soapbox here? If you disagree with my current assessment, if you challenge my current assessment, if this current assessment has sparked a question from you, type something in the box. Talk back to me. Let's make sure we're speaking the same language here, because I have no intention of talking over your head. I have no intention of trying to impress you with my knowledge. I have no intention on just being a talking head on Facebook Live. My intention is to help you make better decisions and build a better business. And what I know is that requires a different kind of conversation, one you might be new to, but I want to make sure that it makes sense to you in its simplest manner, that it makes sense to you. So I'm not talking over your head. So if you disagree, got a question, well, let's pause for a second so we can digest that together. In that spirit, Denise has a thought here. So I'm reading it. So how, in a nutshell, does designing different from marketing? I think we believe marketing is designing a client base. Oh, we're not talking about the same thing. Okay, so Joan says it makes a lot of sense. Okay, Joan, so please respond. What makes a lot of sense, right? So it makes a lot of sense. What specifically to you makes a lot of sense? And while Joan's doing that, I'm going to respond to Denise. So Denise is asking, how, in a nutshell, does designing differ from marketing? Okay, what I'm talking about is how your agency should work, your business should work. I'm talking about how your business should work. I'm not talking about how your marketing should work. I'm talking about how your business should work. And my point of view is that there are three crucial systems that need to exist inside your business. Client acquisition is one system. Client service is a second system. Client service is a third system. And you need to have transparency about those systems. You need to know what your own systems look like inside your own business. How you do marketing is defined by that design. How, what tools you use, what messaging you use, where you put that message, whether you write content or you make video content or you do webinars or you do cold email or you do networking or all of those things are defined by your design. The design comes first. So if it should be someone on a single sheet of paper. And this is something I challenge my clients to do inside the program, is to get base level of clarity, because you can't figure it all out in a snapshot. That's not fair. But look, I got excited. I knocked my microphone over. I challenge my clients to get a base level of clarity about these things so they can move on. There's depth, but get the base level before you move on. All right. So Nelson says, so Denise, if I missed something, if I can respond better, please dialogue back. If I'm good to go, just give me the thumbs up and I won't belabor the point. I don't want to over explain anything. Nelson says, infrastructure is critical, but I have found it difficult to entrust these to other people. Necessity is the mother of invention. Consequently, I found it necessary to do it all myself. I get that. I get that for where you are, where Nelson is right now, perhaps, or where another individual may be, is at this moment, you got to figure out some things for yourself. I get that. I don't argue that. What I try to highlight is it's difficult to do it by yourself. It's not a matter of how talented you are or how smart you are. So this is not a matter of me being smart and you being dumb. That's ridiculous. I wouldn't even imply that. I am saying that it's hard to think through these things all by yourself because of the inundation that we get with all this digital media, digital marketing stuff. There's so much stuff coming at us. Then you have your own personal thought process in your own head. And it's really hard to sort that stuff out. It's really hard to sort that stuff out. So in the spirit of being helpful, I make content like this. I've got a blog. I've got, numerous free things you can download and all that kind of good stuff. So I do my best, at least from my point of view, to give you the kind of tools that can kind of get you started. However, at some point, you got to decide that you want this issue fixed. It's more important that you resolve this and move on than it is that you stay where you are. So you can keep banging your head trying to figure it out, or you can opt into a situation designed to help you fix it. And that's just not just for Nelson, that's for anybody. At some point, you got to make a decision that doing it yourself is just not winning. It's not a winning approach. And you got to figure out how to fix it. You got to fix it. And that's a decision. That's a business leader, business choice decision. It's time to fix it. And while I'm on that path, if it's time to fix it, if that's kind of where you are, time to fix it, please, there's a button you can click, a link you can click where you can schedule time on my calendar, and we can talk about the specific issue facing you, and we can talk about the program that I have to make sure that there's help there, that the solution you're after is actually inside my program. And if so, we'll get started and we'll start fixing this problem for you, right? What you're hearing from me is I have a very, very clear focus on client acquisition, client service, client retention, and having those things be spelled out inside your business. Have clarity about those things so you can get momentum about those things. Okay, I saw a couple other things comes out. Agency design dictates marketing strategy. Makes sense. Thanks. Denise, yes, ma'am. So the light bulb has gone off for you. Great. But nobody talks about designing the business. Everyone's talking about the next marketing hack, the marketing thing that you've got to do. You've got to be having chat bots. You've got to be on Facebook. No, Facebook is broken. So run from Facebook and try Instagram instead. Man, you got to make your own choices, man. You got to decide how you want your agency to work. And what you'll find is that you want your agency to work in a specific way, in a unique way that's unique to you and your situation. So copying someone else's agency design probably isn't going to work for you. There's some fundamentals you might be able to borrow, but at the end of the day, it's your business and you want your agency to work your way. In fact, there was a lady I was talking to yesterday who was sharing her perspective on this. She was saying, my competitors do this and that and this and that, and that stuff does not work. There's a better way of doing those things to get better value to my clients. And we had that conversation. Okay, I'm trying not to belabor the point. What else do we have here? So Joan says, so I challenged Joan, said, what makes sense? And Joan says your three-part framework to get, serve, and keep clients need a real plan where all three strategies work to support each other. Design the business needs to consider all three. Yes, indeed. So you can't design the business without considering all three. Those three are the guts, are the bones. They are the essential. What Joan is highlighting that I think bears to be repeated, needs to be repeated, is this idea that these three systems work together. That's why you can't think about them separately. That's that's why I want to scream about that. So like the marketing hack of the day. So if, for example, right? So if someone says Instagram is where, traffic comes from Instagram, you can get loads and loads of traffic from Instagram, but your client isn't on Instagram, that's a waste of your time. That's a functional waste of your time. So you go learning about Instagram, right? And you go take some courses and speak to some experts and read a bunch of blog posts about Instagram, when fundamentally your client isn't on Instagram. That's a waste of time. And as simple as that may sound, as I'm saying it to you, you're like, duh, Alzay, why would you do that? Have you done that before? Have you gotten caught in the traffic hack of the day and you tried to use Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn perhaps, or Instagram, and then you had that moment where you were like, this is a waste? Have you ever done that? I think we've all done that. I know I've done it. Okay. Joan says, designing the business requires a proactive approach. I haven't said that directly, but that is also what I'm saying. That's an implied element of everything I'm sharing right now. Thank you, Joan, for highlighting that. I am saying that you've got to be proactive about how you think about your business. You cannot wait for your media option of choice to tell you about what needs to be done. You can't, CNN, Fox News, whatever news outlet, right? There's all these social media outlets where you can go and learn what's hot and what's new and what's fresh. You can't wait for them to tell you what you need to be doing. This idea of designing is proactive. And that's why it's so important, or why I challenge my clients to make a decision about what they want to do. Because you've got to decide where you want to put your resources. You've got to make a decision about that. And I can't tell you what to do with your own resources. I can provide an outline. I can help you work through the outline. My job is to support and facilitate, but I cannot decide for you. And unfortunately, there are a lot of very smart people out there who haven't made the decision and find themselves just looping around. That's a whole soapbox. I'll try to avoid that. Okay, I think I've got one more. Actually, I've got two more here. So Emily, let's move on here. So in the spirit of everything I'm describing, right? So because when people on the phone talking with me, this is how I talk to people, because I believe in talking to business owners like business owners. I don't see you as a lead. I don't see you as a prospect. I see you as what you are. You are the leader of a business. You own a business. And so you are trying to make a decision about what will help you do what you're trying to do. My job is to help you make that decision. That's how I view these interactions. So even though right now I'm a talking head on a video and I'm talking to a group of people at this point, this feeling that you get from me is because I'm trying to help you make a decision, by God. I'm not trying to sell you on a thing. Who cares? Okay, so number 5 here, right? Agenda item number 5. The truth. My program probably won't work for you. I cannot tell you how many people I tell this to. I probably say this phrase to every other person I talk to. So I don't say it to everyone, because that's not always a true statement. But every other person, I probably say some version of this phrase to them. I tell them honestly, my program is probably not going to work for you. I don't think what I offer can help you do what you're trying to do. Let me put that in context. So there was a lady I was speaking to yesterday, actually. And she was describing to me what she was trying to build her business into, right? So she's at a given point here, and she's trying to get here, and she's trying to figure out how to make that happen. And so she was describing her pathway, what she was doing to get to her desired goal, right? How to get from here to here. That was what she was describing to me. And the more she spoke, the more concern I had that the approach she was taking was not going to get her there. So to say that another way, she was describing a goal that was up and down. She was describing a goal that was this way. But the tactics that she was using, the route that she was taking, was more left and right. So she wanted to go up and down, but she was talking about things that take her left and right. And I said to her directly, I said, I don't know if my program's going to work for you. I also said the following phrase: I'm going to put some ideas in front of you, but I don't think you're going to like them, because they are going to be in direct contrast to what you just told me you're trying to do. I'm sorry, in contrast to what you're currently doing. So let me say that again. I'm going to put some thoughts in front of you, but I don't think you're going to like them, because they are going to be in direct contrast to the activities that you're currently doing. And she was open to that conversation. So I shared some things with her, much in the spirit that I was just talking to you just a moment ago. That if you do what you're currently doing, you're going to end up somewhere out here. But you said to me that you're trying to go somewhere up here. So I think if you really want to go in this direction, you need this approach, the up and down approach. She was open to that. We had that dialogue. Here's why that matters to you. Emily, let's move to our next our next agenda item here. Here's why what I just said matters to you. Are you more committed to the agency you're trying to build? Or are you more committed to the current route that you're taking? Because the friction that you're feeling right now is this cross friction, is that you want to go this way, but you're doing these kinds of activities. So to be even more specific, your resistance to productizing your service is keeping you from going where you want to go. The fact that you refuse to specialize because you do so many things and you have got so many years of experience, your refusal to specialize is keeping you from moving in this direction. Your refusal to commit to a specific client acquisition system is keeping you from going where you want to go. Because you keep considering option A for client acquisition, option B, option C, option D, option E, because you keep considering all those choices, that is keeping you from going in the direction you want to go. Because you won't be honest about the infrastructure you currently have and the infrastructure required to execute on your desired approach. Because you won't be honest that they might not be the same, is keeping you from going where you're trying to go. Now, there's more in this conversation. There's more in that. But without me having to try to, bullet point all of those, there's a friction that you feel about your existing business. The effort you're putting forward is not taking you where you want to go. And that's causing you friction. And I'm saying it's silly to continue with that friction. Yes, it is silly to continue with that friction. Why would you opt into having that friction every single day? So the first part of this conversation, just for yourself, the first part of this conversation is to just admit to yourself that what the actions I'm taking aren't taking me where I want to go. And I got to fix something. Something in here needs to fundamentally change. I don't need more ideas. I need a shift, a change. I need something to be resolved. I need something to be moved. I need to function in a different way. Part of that is just your own admission to yourself. The next part of that is, where do I go to get that problem solved? So I admit I made a mistake. I've made some mistakes. I admit this is not work going the way I want it to go. I got to get this fixed. And where should you go to fix it? It might be as simple as just changing a software platform. It might be just that simple. I mean, it might be, listen, I currently use software X. I should use software Y. That's it. So I'm not saying it has to be this huge, mental construct. I'm not saying all of that. It might be simple once you settle down, or it might be complex. For those of you who have seen Lynn's testimonial, I did an interview with Lynn. It's posted inside of our Facebook group. And Lynn admits to having limiting beliefs, these kind of mental ideas where she kind of thought that things should work a certain way. And she began to admit that those thoughts were stopping her from going where she was trying to go. It can get heavy. And you've got to admit that you've got these certain thoughts. You've got to admit that those thoughts aren't the best thoughts for where you are. And you got to shift your thinking and push on to a different way. I wish I had some fancy way of saying that. But you got to admit you need help. You got to go get that help. So again, hey, you got to admit to yourself what I'm doing and where I'm trying to go are not in sync. They're not in parallel. They're actually in friction. They're conflicting. Number two, where do I go to get help about that? I'd like my program to be an option. Lynn says it's a little like therapy. It is kind of like therapy. It is, because there's a new thought process you got to have. So again, I offer a program which is my way, my point of view on how you actually get the help, how you get the problem solved, how you can not only have the right thoughts, right, kind of shift to the most optimal way of thinking, but then also execute on that, right? So client acquisition, client service, client retention. Let's get some momentum in those things. And so what we focus on inside the program is using LinkedIn as a platform specifically for client acquisition. So if you sell B2B, if you sell to other businesses, then LinkedIn is a place where you should be anyway. It just makes too much sense. It's a social platform for businesses. That's what it's for. So it just makes sense that you should be there. But how to use LinkedIn? How do you leverage LinkedIn? What infrastructure do you need to have so that LinkedIn can be of benefit to you? These are things we talk about deliberately inside the program, and I do my best to facilitate the process so that you can get these things shaped and get these things in motion so you can go where you want to go. If you'd like to have that conversation, click the link, schedule some time, and then we can talk about it, right? We can talk about where you are at the program and see if there's a match there. And if there is, let's take off running and get this stuff resolved. Let's push on, right? Okay. What else do I have? All right. So that's it. That's it for the content that I had today. A couple of questions came through earlier. I'm going to address those, and then we'll see where we are. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, whatever of your own, a thought of your own, type it in the box, and we'll have a moment on those things. So I am refreshing the page where there were some questions earlier. See if there are any new ones. But there are two. Okay, great. So there are two that I'm prepared to address. One of them is from David Martin. David asks, what's your process for screening new leads? And if you could give them a brief questionnaire to fill out before talking with you, what 10 questions would you use? Okay. Right. What's my process for screening new leads? I'm going to address this question in a way that David probably doesn't expect and that you probably don't expect. I use a lot more content than people think. I use a lot more content than most people suggest or recommend. I think about content marketing. When folks say content marketing, I think about content marketing differently than most people do. What I'm saying in response to David's question is I give people content before they get on the phone with me. There is always content that precedes a phone call with me, one way or another. Whatever, there are many different strategies that I have used and still use so that to get consults in my own business. But no matter what approach I use, content specifically, there's always specific content to help set expectations before someone speaks with me every single time. I'm not talking about a questionnaire. I'm talking about separate from a questionnaire. I'm talking about there's content that I create by design. By design, we talked about design earlier. Content I create by design to make sure that I have better quality conversations with people so that I feel good about it and they feel good about it. So David's probably asking that question because he, like most people, is not putting enough content in front of people. You probably aren't putting the right content in front of people. Content is a thing, but when I mentioned content marketing and how I see it differently, content marketing for most people just means blogging, and I'm not talking about blogging. I'm talking about a much more strategic way of thinking about content. Not today. I've already gone long enough as is. All right, so that was the first half of that. How do you set people up for a consult with you? Content. I use content specifically to set expectations. The second part of David's question was if I could put a 10 questions survey in front of people, or questionnaire in front of people, what would I ask? He asked for 10 questions. I'm not doing 10 questions. I'll give you 3. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What's your problem? Ask those questions in advance. Now, I got to put those questions in context. How you ask those questions depends on the specific problem you are trying to solve for your client. Do not let those questions be open-ended and without context. There's my warning. Now you can go take those questions and put them on a survey somewhere, a questionnaire, and throw them at people, and you're going to be disappointed with the response you get. Unless you have set context for the problem you solve, you're not going to get the best responses from the questionnaires. So I'm talking more about design. I'm back in this design thing. You've got to design the process for how you get new consultations. And having a questionnaire is a good part of that process. But there's some other things you've got to do so that your questionnaire has most value for you and the prospective client. But again, 3 core questions. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What problem are you experiencing? Now, there are other questions you can ask, but again, that kind of requires some more context. All right, good enough. And there was one more big one. So Darius asked a question about his basic question was, how do I think about doing or taking on friends, personal friends as clients? So should I take on a personal friend as a client? I know them personally. Should they become a client of mine? Okay, warning. So my warning of taking on friends as clients is clients know you differently. They have a different kind of relationship with you. And the boundaries, keyword here being boundaries, the boundaries you have set for your friends are different than the boundaries you have set for your clients. For example, clients or your friends can call you or text you any time of night. They're your friends. Shoot the breeze all the time, morning, evening, whatever. Just shoot you a text, call you on the phone. You don't want clients doing that. You don't want clients calling you all times of night with their emergency of the day, right? So that's a very basic boundary, right? One that we can all quickly understand. So there's the warning on working with friends, is that friends don't always appreciate your boundaries. And you haven't done a good job setting those boundaries for your friends. So they're not prepared to respect your expertise. And that's your job. That's your fault. If you haven't done it, that's your fault. In my experience, I have worked with friends on both extremes. I have done free work and have truly overcommitted and played the whole scenario incorrectly with friends. I've done that. You see my face. Like I did not do that right. On the other hand, I have had friends hire me and pay market value for my services. And they respected my expertise. They respected what I brought to the table. They respected my deliverables, and I was compensated accordingly. I've had the entire extreme. But the key word here is about boundaries. You've got to set better boundaries. And do you know what helps you set better boundaries? Having a productized service. So when you have a productized service, you've already spelled out what you do and how you do it and why. When it's already laid out, then you've already told your friend, prospective client, this is how I do business. This is how it operates. Either you want this or not. There are no favors. There's no friends and family discount. There's no other. No, I don't do it any other way. Either you want it the excellent way or you don't. Your choice. Yeah, there you go. I've done it. I don't want to over communicate. All right. So questions, comments, concerns. If there's anything else on your mind, I see what time it is. I know a lot of content today, and I know that perhaps I've introduced some ideas that could be foreign to you. In fact, just tell me that whether you're watching watching it live or you're watching a replay of it. If I've introduced something that you've never heard before, tell me that. Just tell me blank was new, right? Just but if you already knew some of this already, then tell me blank wasn't new. Just type it in the box so I have some feedback here. Because from my perspective, being on the phone and interacting with people like you, is that this kind of conversation is not happening often enough. It's just not. And therefore, you're not prepared to have it. And so you run across someone like me and you're like, oh my God, I never thought about that before. And, I take it as a compliment, but I'm also trying to say to you that that's the beginning of the conversation. You've got to press further, right? So Nelson is giving me the thumbs up that the productized service is definitely the way to go. Yeah, I really do. I believe that. I believe in it as a strategic asset inside your business, not just some clever concept that I'm trying to sell to you. I believe that the productized service is a strategic asset inside your business. You can build on top of the productized service. But if you don't have a productized service, there's nothing to build on top of. You have no asset. I believe that fundamentally. But what I'm saying to Nelson and to everyone else is that the productized service is the beginning of this conversation. Just, hearing about it the first time isn't enough. You got to actually build a productized service. You have to actually sell a productized service. You have to actually deploy the productized service. You got to do all that stuff too. I'd like to help you do it. I'd like to help you do it. I'd like to help you do it. I'd like to help you get new conversations via LinkedIn. I'd like to help you offer your version of a productized service to those prospective clients and those prospective opportunities. And I'd like to help you systemize that in a way where you can get some momentum. If that sounds exciting, you can click the button up, down, left, right. Somewhere on this page is a place where you can schedule some time to speak with me. We can have that conversation. And if this model fits, great. Let's do it. Let's get to work. And if it doesn't, that's okay. We'll talk about something else. I'll just encourage you to go somewhere else. Good people, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, dialoguing today. We're done. I'll see you next week. I'll see you in the group. Talk to you soon.